Hey guys, thanks for joining me. I wanted to come on here and teach you another math lesson. Our math packet this week has a ton of new stuff that we hadn't learned in math class. So I wanted to come on here and give you a look at some of that new geometry stuff. And then Miss Mano tomorrow is going to give you a video on the other half of the geometry content. So our packet this week was pretty large. It had a majority of geometry skills, and then a little bit at the end was review of multiplication and division. So I know earlier this week, Mr. Nichols went over and reviewed some of the strategies that we have for multiplication and division so that you could brush up on that in the packet, and then all the rest is geometry. Okay, so I'm going to start off with some of that first, and then, like I said, Miss Mano will continue the rest. So what is geometry? Geometry is the study of shapes. So we're going to go over some key vocabulary today, and then you'll need to know that for the discussion that Miss Mano has about shapes and polygons and what those are and different characteristics they have. Okay, so the first word we're going to learn in our geometry unit is a point. Okay, so this dot right here looks like a dot, looks like a period in a sentence. It's called a point. Okay, and a point is an exact position or location in space. Okay, and that's going to make more sense once we start looking at putting all this vocabulary together. So the first important word you need to know is a point, and this is what it looks like. The second vocabulary term you need to know is a line. Okay, so a line is straight and it does not end. So these arrows on the end, okay, show that it keeps going on and on forever in those directions. It doesn't end, it continues on. Okay, so it can be going across like this, horizontal. It can be going up and down, a vertical line, or even diagonal. So a straight line with arrows at the end showing that it goes on and on forever. So we have a point and a line. The next vocabulary term we need to know is line segment. Okay, so a line segment takes a line and points, the two words we just learned. So this is an example of what a line segment looks like. So again, it is a straight line, but it has two endpoints, okay? So that's what makes it a segment. A segment means a piece or a part of a line. So we might have a line that goes on forever, but when we give it two endpoints, we are just taking a chunk or a piece of that line. So a line segment, okay, is a piece of a line. Now, the next word that we need to know is ray, okay? Not array like we've heard in multiplication, just ray, okay? So array, again, is also straight, okay? And it's part of a line. What makes it different from a line segment, which is part of a line, is that it has one endpoint, okay? And on the other end is an arrow. So one part of the ray is stopped with an endpoint. The other end, however, can go on and on. Okay, it can continue. So remember, this one is going to look the most different because it has an endpoint and an arrow that keeps going on in one direction only. Okay, now again, like our segments and like our lines, it can be going horizontally across, it can go diagonal or up and down. So let's stop here and see if we can figure out what these examples are. This one right here is straight. It has an endpoint and an arrow. So since it has those two different things, we know that this is an example of a ray. Okay? Now, this example over here, it's tiny, it's hard to see, but it has two arrows at the end letting us know that it goes on and on forever. So since it goes on and does not stop, we know that this is a line. Okay? This one over here, notice that it has two endpoints. So that means it is a piece of a line. This is showing us a line segment, okay? Now, this is not any straight line, so this is not an example of one of the words we talked about, okay? All right. Now that we know these vocabulary terms, we are going to see how they get put together and form angles. Well, what is an angle? Okay, an angle is formed by two rays, okay, or two line segments that share an endpoint. Okay, so think of like a corner. They share that corner. So this right here, okay, these two rays share this endpoint to form an angle. Here, these two line segments share a point to form an angle. Here, sharing a point, these two rays are sharing a point to form an angle. And here again, these two rays are sharing a point to form an angle. So think of when two of these come together and make a corner, okay, or a little vertex, like a V shape, okay? Now, there's three different types of angles that we're going to talk about so that you can recognize when you see them. So the type of angle depends on the size of the opening between the rays or the line. So think about when you open a door or you open a cabinet, okay? If you only open it a little, like a little creak of it, it's going to be a tiny opening. If you open the door all the way, it's going to be a wider opening, okay? So we are going to look at the size of the opening, okay? So a circle is a whole 360 degrees, and we measure angles with amounts of degrees, okay? So our first type of angle is a right angle, okay? A right angle is 90 degrees. It's also called a square corner, okay? So I want you to think of what it looks like when we separate our circles into fourths. It looks like that 1/4 of a circle, okay? And it also can remind you of the corner of a square or even that L shape. I like to think of it as the L shape. I know that when I see that L, like in my name, it reminds me that it is a right angle, okay? Our next angle is called an acute angle. Now, this means that it is less than a right angle. So it is less than 90 degrees. So any angle less than 90 degrees is going to have a small opening, okay? Think of that door only opening a crack, okay? Smaller angles are called acute angles, okay? Less than 90 degrees, not a very wide opening. Our final type of angle are the ones that are very wide open, much larger than a 90-degree angle, okay? They are more than 90 degrees and they have a wide opening. These are called obtuse angles, okay? So think of what you know of your right angle, that L shape, and then spread it out wider. That is going to be an obtuse. Now, I know these all have different type of interesting names, but try to think of obtuse is the wide one and acute is the tiny one, okay? So let's see if we can pinpoint what some of these angles are in my examples here, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is find my L-shape angles. I know that those will be the right angles. So here I have two rays that share an endpoint making that corner. So this is a right angle, okay? Now this is a smaller opening, okay? This is a ray and a line segment coming together, sharing an endpoint to form a smaller angle. So since it's a smaller angle, that means it is an acute angle. Now here I'm seeing one that is two rays sharing an endpoint forming an even closer and tinier angle. So that's going to be another acute angle. Okay, this one looks like it's tipping back wider than my 90-degree right angle. So that's going to be our wider obtuse angle. Here I just have a diagonal line, well, not a line, a diagonal ray that has an endpoint and an arrow. So this is a diagonal ray. And then here again, I have these examples down here. They have one endpoint and one arrow, so both of these are rays. Okay? So let's recap some of our vocabulary. Let me scooch it up in case it's hard to see. So, what is an exact location in space? The definition, an exact location in space is a point. Okay? Now, what is straight and has no end? That means it goes on and on in both directions. That is a plain old line. Okay? Our next one says it is straight, but it is a piece of a line with two endpoints. So there is our line segment. Remember, segment means piece or part of a line. Here we have a straight piece of a line that has one endpoint and one side that goes on in another direction. That is our ray. Here we have when two rays share an endpoint, or when two line segments share an endpoint, that forms an angle. Okay? And what is called a square corner? And that looks like an L. That is 90 degrees. That is our right angle. Okay? So we start with all those vocabulary terms, then when we put them together, we can form things like lines and line segments and angles. Okay? So now that we have gone through those terms, you should be able to find this page in your packet, okay, this chart, where it gives all our vocabulary terms: point, line segment, ray, angle, okay? And you need to fill out a picture of each of those, a definition like we just went over of each of those, and then another example, okay? So you should be able to fill out that page in your packet from this video, okay? Also, if you want to look at the Brain Pop video that I linked on our third grade website, that video and this video will both help you figure out how to best fill out this chart in your packet. And then you can even try this page and this page on your packet, where you are starting to describe shapes and identify when you see a ray or line segment or angle, okay? And then this page has another chart, okay, where you're giving an example of each, and then down here you are circling the box that has two rays and one line segment. So I want you to look at all of these and what they have, okay? As I look, I'm seeing line segments, rays, regular lines, okay? So you have to pick the correct box that has two rays and one line segment on this page of your packet, okay? And finally, this page in your packet is giving you some definitions and vocabulary, okay? So you can cut these out and try to match them up of which definition matches with which example, okay? So that is our short lesson for today. Remember, these important vocabulary terms are kind of the basic foundation for our geometry unit. You need to know these words and the types of angles, and then Miss Mano is going to describe and discuss in her video different types of plane shapes and different types of polygons, so how lines and line segments all kind of come together and form shapes, and different sides come together and have different angles. So she's gonna take this basic lesson and then add to it when she helps us with the different shapes and polygons and all of that. Okay, So thanks for joining me. I hope this helped you fill out these pages in your packet. Remember, you can watch this and the Brain Pop video, and that should make the packet way easier. I know it's a lot of new stuff. So go ahead and use this to help you, and I will see you next time. Thank you for joining me.